Warning, the following 8-bit mid-month pre-St. Patrick's Day madness flick is for mature as well as immature audiences as well. Viewer discretions have been advised. The following footage takes place approximately 1 hour after this week's Music O'Finnegan's Village that I never get an invite to.
Oh boy, we love Freddy. I tell you, next time I see you, Rodney McPiper, it's going to be personal, not business. And Colin the Maestro, where were you during the whole fight? You were over in the corner getting a drink without me. Very offensive, very offensive. Every single year, that guy. Where in the world does he come from? Oh, the small town in Dublin, you say? Whatever. Dang. And the fact that I almost lost my voice for that is still absolutely hilarious, but I can't wait to go back there next year. Should be fun. But next time I go, I know what I'm packing. Plenty of Ricola. And I still think that guy who was a part of Judas Priest should do a Ricola commercial, because I got a feeling it would be crazy to see. You know, him on the top of the Himalayan mountains, screaming at the top of his lungs, going, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, live from Morristown, New Jersey, it is the Level 219 edition of Indy Radio. Okay. And now here's your host, a man who was gonna pull off a Rob Halford impersonation to bust my eardrums, DJ Smokey. Hey, what do you mean I was gonna bust your eardrums with an impersonation of, wait, you know the lead singer of Judas Priest? And he's nodding his head over in a corner. Well, besides all that, folks, welcome to the Indie Radio Arcade Level 219 edition. I am your game show host from the East Coast, DJ Smokey, and we've got plenty of that 8-bit goodness to bring some sham-rocking good luck to your sham-rocking weekend. Because we kick things off with a very special Tune crossover edition of the 3MR and Nicktoon crossover with Bruce Willis, and that's the only heads up we're giving you. Next up on the plate, we also go into a very special Beat 'em Up Squad edition of the Instant Classic video game review, and this one features a Samoan submission machine. Just saying. Next up on the plate, we put your high scores on high display along with some cool indie games along the way for another edition of the Indie Wall of Fame. And finally, last but not least, we wrap up this show with yet another edition of the $64,000 question. That apparently, according to Colin the Maestro, might tie in with either the movie or the game for this week. They don't know, since they were forced to make it on the spot. Yeah, since you took over the duties for that for the past 2 weeks, so you might as well take it over now. And I guess with Colin the Maestro rolling the machines, I might as well tell everybody at home to get out their pennies, quarters, nickels, dimes, Albanian money, or whatever sort of coins that I got a feeling a leprechaun will have in a pot of gold to get ready to play a very special mid-month 8-bit St. Patrick's Day pre-madness edition of the Indie Radio. Okay. It's time to play the game, kids. Alright, all you moviegoers out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into yet another Film Tin Reel edition of the 3MR. And the movie we have up on the plate for this week is none other than the crossover film of a lifetime from Nickelodeon, none other than Rugrats Go Wild. And Carla the Maestro said, I found this appropriate since you actually reviewed not only Rugrats and the Wild Thornberrys 2 weeks back to back. And I think that was one of the major reasons why we picked it. And a good one, too. And the meat and potatoes for this said film would feature the family of not only Chucky, Phil, Lil, and everyone else. Yeah, we decided to go that route besides naming all the people who would end up going on a vacation thanks to Stu, only to realize that they would go on a rickety boat that would lead to a series of problems. And yeah, let's just say that's the meat and potatoes of that. But besides not trying to spoil the movie, folks, what did I like about this said film? Well, for starters, the fact that they were able to get not only the cast of the Wild Thornberrys, but also the cast of the Rugrats together in one giant oversized film, which I think would be one of the first crossover films that they would have for Nickelodeon. And you can quote me on that. Another thing that I loved about this film would be the actors that would be featured during the said film too, which would not only feature Marianne Thornberry, aka Jordy Crisili, hopefully we said that name right, who would not only be a part of Final Fantasy 15, but would even be a part of the Mr. Peabody and Sherman show for one episode. Even would be able to be featured a part of Robot Chicken as Marianne Thornberry for one episode, and even Bethany's mom. Not bad. And according to Carla the Maestro, before we move on, she was also Madame Prudence, a part of Dishonored and the Dunwall City trials for Dishonored. Next up on the plate, you have none other than Lacey Chabert, who would play Eliza Thornberry during this said film, but would also be responsible for playing none other than Emily, a part of Haul Out, the Holly Lit Up, even being none other than Supergirl during the Harley Quinn animated series for one episode, and would also play none other than Marion Hawthorne in the Harriet the Spy TV series. Never knew they had a TV series. Interesting. But to get back on track, folks, you would also have Tim Curry featured during this film, who would play Nigel Thornberry, but would also be responsible for playing Darth Sidious in Star Wars The Clone Wars for 10 episodes. Even would play the Sorcerer for 19 episodes, a part of Randy Cunningham, 9th Grade Ninja. And of course would be the Forever King Joseph Chadwick for one episode of Ben 10's Omniverse. Then you have none other than Elizabeth Daly, who would play Tommy Pickles, who would not only play that role a part of the TV show of Rugrats and this said film, but would also play Buttercup a part of Jellystone for one episode, and would even play the role of Buttercup in Multiverses, as well as playing the same role a part of the Powerpuff Girls. And Carla the Maestro said she would also be a part of the said movie of Sing 2 as Tarsier. Don't you mean Tarsier? And he said, no, that wouldn't be the name of the person. Okay. But to get back on track, folks, we would also see her a part of none other than, and Carla the Maestro a little bit confused because they were going to mention Long Gone Gulch, which, yeah, that was right, she played Rawhide. But to get back on track once again, before any other interruptions break up the programming, You would also see Nancy Cartwright, who would play Chucky Finster during this said film and a part of the Rugrats and whatever video game associated with it. But speaking of games, would also be Bart Simpson, a part of The Simpsons. Even would be a part of none other than Dear Class of 2020 as Bart Simpson. And would also be Bart Simpson, a part of Inside the Actor Studio. Then you have none other than Kate Susie, who would not only play Phil and Lil, a part of the Rugrats, but would also be a part of none other than Looney Tunes as Lola Bunny, and a part of the Wacky World of Sports for the video game that released last year. And would also be Princess Num Num, a part of the TV series of Futurama for 21 episodes, and would also be a part of Warcraft Rumble, Firebuds as Mina for 6 episodes, and of course would play Daniel Page, a part of Harry Potter Magic Awakened. Next up on the list, you would have none other than Diane Kwan, who would play Kimmy Finster during this said film, but would also play none other than Lily and Aunt Ling in 2 episodes of Curious George. Even would play A.E. Winter, a part of Epic 7 in 2018, and was also featured in Bratz Go to Paris, the movie, as Jasmine. Not bad. Oh, and before I forget, would also be Trixie Tang, a part of the Fairly Odd Parents for 31 episodes. Hey, she was in a lot of stuff. Then next up, folks, we would have none other than, and Carla the Maestro said, Cheryl Chase. Okay, so what do you know about her? For Carla the Maestro to say that she would not only be Angelica Pickles, a part of this film, but also Rugrats in Paris, and a part of 152 episodes of the Rugrats, but would also be a part of the random cartoons as a nurse, and would also revise her role, a part of All Grown Up, for 42 episodes. Next up after that, you would have the late great Joe Lasky, who would not only play Lou Pickles, a part of this said film, but also a part of the series of the Rugrats, but would also be responsible for playing the role of one of my favorite Looney Tunes of all time, a Bugs Bunny, and of course playing Duck Dodgers, a part of, well, Duck Dodgers. And finally, last but not least, because Carla the Maestro said this one is of great importance, you would see none other than the man, the myth, the legend himself, Bruce Willis, playing in this film as well too, as Spike the dog. And if you're wondering how's that possible, well, thanks to the fact that a certain someone could speak to animals, Spike would finally get a voice, and they would choose Bruce Willis for the said role. And for those who don't know who he is, not only the man who was involved in the film of 12 Monkeys, but also the guy who was a part of the Die Hard series. You know, just to name a few films. That, and of course the guy who took Zed out in the said film of Pulp Fiction. You know, the boxer, the guy who played a boxer. Now, one of my favorite scenes, a part of this said film, not to spoil the film for anybody at home, would have to be the role when we would see not only Angelica and Eliza getting along, and I guess Angelica finding her match during this said film. You know, someone who she can finally relate to without being, you know, somewhat of an annoyance to other people. And oh yeah, my other favorite scene, and the reason why we did have to mention Bruce Willis, would have to be the scene where we would finally see Spike finally talking, and I was surprised to hear it was Bruce Willis. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review films along the lines of Siskel and Ebert or any of those other famous film reviewers that you know of out there, we say this. If you guys want to go ahead and check out a film that features the Rugrats going on a vacation that would go horribly wrong, similar to what would happen to Gilligan on Gilligan's Isle, only for them to find the people that would be a part of another show that might have aired 30 minutes to an hour before theirs for a crossover event like no other, then I recommend you go out there and watch that flick. And if you were lucky enough, and some we almost forgot to mention, you could have actually seen this or smelled this film with smell-o-vision, because that was one of the things they had during the film when it first released. Another cool thing that I loved about it. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with more of the Indy Radio Arcade right after a word from our sponsors. So don't hit pause on those controllers just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Alright, all you Rogue Game Squad members out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into another edition of the Instant Classic Video Game Review, and the game we have up on the plate for this week is one of a lot of controversy straight from Rocksteady Games, none other than Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Oh boy, this has been a month long overdue according to Call of the Maestro, and I could see why, because they've been waiting with bated breath on our opinion for this one. And the meat and potatoes of this said game would feature you as either Harley Quinn, Killer Shark, Deadshot, or Captain Boomerang himself, all taxed with the force of trying to take out the Justice League. And I put the words "take out" in quotations for those who played the story. And no spoilers. No spoilers. And with those meat and potatoes out of the way for this game, and a very controversial game at that, what did I like about it? Well, the one thing that I loved about this game, I would have to say, would have to be the voice acting that was featured for this said game. And the reason why, folks, because for those who don't know, this would be the last game we would be blessed with the voice of Kevin Conroy as Batman. Yeah, and it's a sad thing to hear, but the fact that he would be a part of this game, as well as none other than the woman of 1,000 voices, Tara Strong, who would play the voice of none other than Harley Quinn, a part of this game. But even seeing none other than J.P. Karbarlik, and hopefully we said that name right, who would voice the voice of the Joker, a part of this said game, but would also be responsible for playing Morph and Hulk for 8 episodes of X-Men 97, the Boss Baby for the said series of the Boss Baby Back in Business, and would even play the Green Goblin in 61 episodes of Spidey and His Amazing Friends, and would also be Kozo in Neon Genesis Evangelion. But another man who was a part of this game, who at the time had a bit of a sweet tooth, would be the former World Heavyweight Champion and several different companies he'd been a part of, none other than the Samoan submission machine himself, Samoa Joe. And the fact that he was playing King Shark in this was pretty cool to hear about too. And another thing that we loved about this game outside of the voice acting would have to be the characters involved with this game, because a chance to play members of the Suicide Squad was something I always wanted to see in a video game outside of already getting a chance to play as Deadshot or, according to Call of the Maestro, Wade, a part of one of the Arkham games. And Harley Quinn, I was overly excited to have them a part of this game. And another thing that I loved about this game, which a lot of people might be on the fence about, and it's a bit of a double-edged sword, would have to be the combat featured for this set game as well too. And my favorite amount of combat for the characters in this game, I would have to say, would have to be either the Joker, Mrs. Freeze, or even King Shark himself. You know, some people with some very unorthodox fighting styles that really do come through when you're fighting in this game. And with everything that I liked about this game, what didn't I like about this game? Well, one thing I can tell you right off the bat that I didn't like about this game would have to be, first off, would have to be the AI opponents that you would have with you, or the other members of the Suicide Squad if you're playing by yourself and you get dropped during a mission. And you're on the ground looking for some form of help and they're nowhere to be found. Trust me, it'll happen more often than most. And another thing that I didn't like about this game would have to be the glitches that I would run into for this game as well too. Especially when you fight the Green Lantern enemies in certain challenge missions for this game, because for those who don't know, when you go out to the fields and try to take out certain people during one of those 1 versus 100 type missions, at times, when the said Green Lantern enemies are around and you believe you took everybody out in the field, there's still one lingering enemy that puts a shield over the other enemies that makes it impossible for you to take out unless you magically go to another area, come back, and then take out that character. So yeah, a bit of a needle in a haystack situation with all the enemies around, and the reason why I said combat in this game is a double-edged sword. Another thing that I didn't like about this game was the fact that it wasn't a couch co-op game. It really is a shame. This would have been a wonderful beat-em-up co-op game on a couch with a friend of yours, but unfortunately, seeing the fact that it was one of those online service games, it really did shoot itself in the foot. And yeah, that was another thing that we didn't like about this game, and we'll add in as well, Diablo being a live service game was another thing we wasn't a fan of. And with everything that we liked and didn't like about this game, what do we think that they could do to improve upon it? Well, for starters, make this a couch co-op game. I mean, they already got offline mode available nearing the end of the programming for this game itself, but a chance for it to be a couch co-op game, I got a feeling you'll get more people to play it. Another thing that I wish they had for this game, seeing the fact that and Carl and Maestro even point this out too, we do not see King Shark using guns in any of the Suicide Squad comics or movies, so a chance for him to go to melee combat and limit the combat for guns to people who actually use guns at some point in this said Suicide Squad would have been a better choice. You know, mix up the options for certain characters to use guns and other characters to actually use their said swords, bats, knives, razors, bayonets, or anything they could possibly get their hands on. It would have been a better option. And another thing that I wish that they could add to this game would be more characters a part of the Suicide Squad. I mean, I understand the ship has sailed, Carl and the Maestro, but we had a big wish list of characters that we really wish would have been a part of the Suicide Squad. First off, Killer Frost. That would have been nice. I mean, granted, I understand you added Mrs. Freeze, but Killer Frost would have been a nice addition to the group. Another character we wish and really would have loved to see a part of this game would be the Enchantress. Because I got a feeling with her powers, she would be more or less the mage in the background, not only being able to use people against their will just like Brainiac would, but also a chance to heal people around them to help them get the job done. And another character we really wish was a part of the Suicide Squad for this game would have to be El Diablo. Yeah, a chance to use a character that can use fire attacks to take people out all over the field in one big combo attack. That would have been nuts to see in the world of Suicide Squad. But unfortunately, no. And the last but not least thing that I wish they could have added to this game was a better chance for the AI people or the computers to actually help you out when you're down in the field when you're trying to take out other enemies, which there are a lot of them on screen when you're doing certain missions. And not to mention for the boss battles as well too, which is another thing that will wear on you when you're playing this game. I'll just tell you in advance. And seeing the fact that we don't know how to review games along the lines of gold stars, coins, letters, or bricks, we review games in only two ways around here, folks. Will there be a video game story for this game in the near future? And do we recommend this game for you, the squad? I guess the squad Rocksteady killing force at home. And yeah, for the first one, yes, there will be a video game story and 2 words, folks, next week. And a mission that we're gonna call Joker's Funhouse. And yeah, it's appropriate for the month of madness due to the sheer insanity that happened while using the Joker for one of the missions. And one of the main reasons why he's one of my favorites. Well, a part of the Suicide Squad. I wish Two-Face was in there too, but unfortunately he lost his number. And do we recommend this said game for you, the squad co-op killing force at home? Well, if you want to play a game that involves you playing as Arkham Asylum's finest, trying to save the world from the heroes that once saved it, controlled by an evil mastermind that's friends with Lex Luthor, but not friends with him in this said game, then I recommend you go out there and cop that disc. Because the last time we checked, folks, it's just about $10. So you can't lose with that. You can't lose with that. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back to that music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the Indy Wall of Fame as the Indy Radio Arcade rolls on right after a word from our sponsors. So don't run out of quarters just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you kings and queens of the leaderboards out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And here's hoping in the near future, if they do decide to come back to that game, they do go with their original vision for it. And Carl and Michael said with how much money they lost on the game in the first place, I highly doubt they're going back to it. You got a point there, you really do. And oh, I almost forgot to mention for the Rugrats film, Bruce Willis wasn't credited during the said film itself, but was credited during the trailer for the film when they showed it on Nickelodeon. Weird. Very, very weird. But besides that bit of weirdness, folks, I think it's time for us to go ahead and put your high scores on high display, along with some cool indie games along the way, for a very special lucky number 7 edition of the Indy Wall of Fame. And the first game that we have up comes from the developers Viwalpa Studios with their said game of Mini Racer Car Shop Simulator. And this game automatically reminds me of, I would have to say Radio Shack. Now, the reason why I say that, folks, is because Radio Shack back in the day used to sell a lot of these cool looking RC cars that would cost you a fortune. So here's hoping in the near future for this said game that not only you get a chance to soup up these said cars, and according to Carl and the Maestro you can, but also a chance to test them out as well. And they would show me picture 3 where you would have a test track to test these cars with loops on them. Nice! And the next game that we have up, besides testing my childhood cars on a makeshift field in a digital space, comes from the developers Flagman Jeremy with their set game of FJN Blackjack Club. Or Blackjack Cup, according to Colin the Maestro. Wish it was a Blackjack Club, but nevertheless, this game automatically reminds me of, you know what? From the Super Mario Brothers game for the 3DS, Luigi Jack. Really does. And here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to play alongside with your friends to see who can come out on top for Blackjack glory, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to be a dealer during the tournament as well, too. And according to Call of the Maestro, no, you can't be the dealer and you can only be the player in that game. Alright, well, here's hoping in the near future you get a chance to be a dealer and a chance for you to play alongside with your friends in this 64-player tournament. But besides trying to get a blackjack tournament started in the near future, with Monopoly money of course, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Green Sauce Games with their set game of Hope's Farm 2. And this game automatically reminds me of Harvest Moon. Yeah, it definitely reminds me of Harvest Moon if it was in 2D. And here's hoping in the near future that not only you get a chance to have some friends help you raise this cool looking farm, but maybe, just maybe, a chance for you to have a couple of farm hands on hand to help you out too, because I got a feeling winter's right around the corner and if those crops are still out there, yeah, they'll wither. They'll definitely wither out, which will cost you a lot of money if it's anything like Farm Simulator. And Carl and I shall say I should know about a lot of money lost from Farm Simulator. And before you go any further, Carl and Maestro, don't remind me, I already know. Well over $12 million. I know. But besides my farm debt that we have to clear out in the near future, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Duck Chicken. Nice name, by the way, with their set game of A Regular Store. And this game automatically reminds me of a combination of not only Five Nights at Freddy's, but with a little hint of Emily Wants to Play in there as well, too. Now, here's hoping in the near future that you can use whatever on the shelves for this store to defend yourself from whatever sort of demonic toy or evil entity that's gonna come after you while you watch over this store in the middle of the night. Because I got a feeling something's gonna come to life and try to kill you, and with the picture of what appears to be some form of Chicken Man toy-like thing on the ground, yeah, Markland Beasts are not too far behind with that. So here's hoping you get a chance to actually, take them out. But besides me trying to take on demonic toys just like Puppet Master did during that one crossover film, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Satbox with their set game of Desktop Golf. And this game automatically reminds me of the old school flash game of Nabisco Golf. Or what's it, Triscuit Golf? According to Call of the Maestro, it was a Triscuit 4x4 game, and the Nabisco had the golf game because they had for the things before you decide to putt the ball. Before you hit the ball off the green, there was these two giant oversized Nabisco cookies on the side to prevent you from hitting it off of both sides. But that was mini golf, and this is desktop golf. So here's hoping in the near future for this set game that not only you get a chance to design your own course, but a chance to play alongside with your friends too. And according to Call of the Maestro, you can play with your friends, but not too entirely sure if you can customize the course. Alright, I'll take it. But besides playing a cool golf game that may take place on a desktop leading to your refrigerator, the next game that we have up comes from the developers Take It Studios with their set game of Electrician Simulator VR. And And this game automatically reminds me of an episode of Home Improvement because I got a feeling something is gonna go horribly wrong, especially when you try to plug in that toaster for things to go haywire. So here's hoping in the near future for this game that not only you get a chance to wear rubber gloves before testing any of the electronics, but also get a chance to have another guy there as a little bit of a backup just in case we can tell you, I don't think you should plug that in, bud. I don't think that's gonna work there, bud. Just have a guy with some long mustache on his face telling you bud every single time when you try to plug something in as a helpful advisor for you to ignore him and to end up getting electrocuted. And Carl and the Maestro said that would only happen to me and not to them. All right, well, when this game comes out, go give it a shot. And I would love to see how you do and write me for your performance. But besides the performance of Carl and the Maestro in a game with electronics, the last but not least game we have up for this week comes from none other than TZN Games with their said game of Office Simulator Prologue. And this game automatically reminds me of working in an office building. Now, here's hoping in the near future for this office building that's going to be quieter than a funeral home. Here's hoping in the near future you get a chance to add some music in there, maybe get rid of the giant oversized cubicles that will feel like a prison, and also maybe, just maybe, a chance for one of the workers there to get that nice corner office right next to that window. And Carl and Maestro said, why would you want them to have that? Well, so they can feel some form of accomplishment and not be crowded by everybody in the office. That's the reason why. Oh, that and plus they got Employee of the Month at least 3 weeks in a row. They deserve some form of prize. But besides trying to give old whoever the... And when Carl and the Maestro over there asking for a bigger office, don't worry, we'll get one in the future. We might as well head on over to the high scores for this week. And the first high score that we have up comes from none other than Fred B999 with their said high score of, and get this folks, 999,900, a part of the game of Streets of Rage for the Sega Genesis. Next high score that we have up after that comes from Paul Ford with their said high score of Metzinger 85 for the Atari 2600. Or according to Carl and the Maestro, their high score of 16,700. Oh, we read the wrong set of numbers. Anyway, folks, next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than Swaggers. Nice name, by the way, with their said high score of 15.583 seconds, a part of the Android game of Climb Racing 2. Next high score that we have up after that comes from none other than David Ganthier. Hopefully we said his last name right, with his said high score of 13,247,320. A part of the Atari 1982 game of, apparently according to Carl and the Maestro, Olympian. You sure that's the name of the game? Apparently, yes, it is. All right, we'll go with it. And the next high score that we have up comes from none other than Big Friendly, with their said high score of 254,624, a part of the classic game of Bump and Jump for the Atari 2600. Next high score that we have up after that comes from Andrew Peterby with their said high score of none other than 6,110, a part of the PS4 game of Just Dance 2016. Not bad. Next high score that we have up after that comes from TK 2014 with their said high score of 1 minute 41.84 seconds, a part of the PS2 game of Jeep Thrills. Next high score after that comes from none other than, once again, Andrew Peterme with their said high score of 1 minute 56.01 seconds, a part of the PS5 game of Test Drive Unlimited, a part of the Solar Crown Hong Kong Island circuit. Not bad. And the last but certainly not least high score that we have up for this week comes from none other than Henrik Windman with their said high score of 167,800, a part of the NES Famicom game of Super Sprint. If you guys want to go ahead and check out any other cool high scores that are still making their way through the Twitterverse as we speak from this past week and beyond, then you can go ahead and head on over to the Twitter page and website that are still named the same, but it's just as critically acclaimed, only known as twingalaxies.com, to check out all those cool high scores and even win cool prizes for them and have them mention a part of this show, which is always a fair trade. It really is. And the high score that has taken the crown from the previous high score from last week now goes to none other than David Gaither with their said high score of 13,247,320, a part of the Atari 1982 game of Fast Freddy. See, that was the actual name of the game too. See, should have mentioned that, Carl and Maestro. And if you also want to go ahead and check out any other cool games that are still coming through the Twitterverse and the Steam Machine via a cargo ship, cargo plane, or even subterranean train that is currently rumbling underneath your toes, then you can head on over to the store.steam power page of one man only known as store.steampower.com and click ever so lightly on that upcoming button while clicking on that Indy button while avoiding the said E=MC² eyeball and floating door that you might find, because these games might take you directly to a place in time and space known as the Indy Zone, which is its own brand of madness. Let me let you know firsthand. And I guess with that said, folks, I think it's time for us to head back into the music once again. And when we return, we'll be back with another edition of the $64,000 question for this week, right after a word from our sponsors. So don't skip out on that bonus round just yet, folks, and stay tuned. Right, all you pot of gold racing champions out there, welcome back to the Indy Radio Arcade. And now it's time for us to go into another edition of the $64,000 question. But before we go into this week's $64,000 question, we go into last week's question of madness, where we asked you for upwards of $5.12 million. Would you try to pull off the Scarab job from the Agents of Sabotage DLC from Grand Theft Auto while having a band perform the song Sabotage? And several of you out there would sound off pretty good on this one, because we added almost when the show ended that you had to get this done before daylight savings time to get the full price money listed above. And you would say, you can't add more craziness to this challenge after the fact, can you? Another person would say, where do you expect us to get the tech from that? And the last person, just 1 hour prior to a 1 hour time leap, would actually be able to get the Scarab out of Fort Zancudo and would have a cover band by the name of the Pizza Boys to do a cover of the song Sabotage while stealing the Scarab and eating some pizza. Yeah, they were all dressed like pizza delivery boys, and they were able to pull off that heist, so That's impressive within itself. So congratulations, you're going home with $5.12 million. Or according to Carl and the Maestro, just to rub more salt in the wound, $10.24 million. Thanks. And with that challenge out of the way, folks, and before we go forward, yes, we can add madness to a challenge like that at a moment's notice, but we never had to pull it off before because we always believed that we had everything under control. But, yep, not in this case. And where do we expect you to get the tech for all of this? I would have to say most likely from one of those department stores. You know, one of those spy tech stores that's off the side of a highway that I won't name the name of. Yeah, you'll be able to find it there. Hint, hint. Hint, hint. And with all those questions answered, we now go into this week's $64,000 question, which is worth the one gold coin I really don't want, signed the man who made this challenge, saying, would you get in a go-kart race with me from the said movie series of Leprechaun in my custom go-kart? If you're able to best me, I'll give you my least favorite coin from me pot to gold. And Carl, Maestro, you guys did this? Was this you? Apparently, according to Carl and the Maestro, no, it wasn't them. And apparently, it really was the guy from Leprechaun. And he wants this challenge done before sundown for St. Patrick's Day. So, yeah, before you answer that question at home, folks, you're gonna have to wait another 2 weeks there, you pot of gold racers, because Carl and the Maestro are currently rolling out the machines, which means we've got to bring the Indy Radio Arcade for this week to an emphatic close. But don't worry, if you miss any of the madness we were able to give you for this week of the 8-bit variety, don't worry, we got you covered, because you can catch this show again one more time, all the time, on our SoundCloud, Facebook, Instagram, and Tumblr pages, as well as our Live 365 page, still all named the same, only known as Music Village Radio, under the hashtag Indie Radio Arcade Level 219. And Carl and the Maestro had to inform us that, yeah, we still have another show this month to go, and it might feature a $219,000 question for it. Okay, I'll be prepared for it. And if you guys want to figure out what the crazy and zany things we still got prepared for this month of madness, like a show that apparently has a bonus episode to wrap up your month of madness with a predetermined money amount for it, then you can go ahead and check it out on our YouTube, Discord, and Twitter pages, still all named the same, only known as the Double Agent 0012. And before we head out for the night, we would like to thank, as always, you, the game show contestants out there, for listening in to a very special 8-bit mid-month pre-Leprechaun Day edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. We would also like to thank you, the independent artists out there, for doing that musical goodness like you always do. And keep up the great work, guys, because, yeah, I got a feeling your services may be called upon again to be a part of this $64,000 question that's gone haywire thanks to somebody from a certain horror movie from back in the day. And why do we believe that you can pull that off? Because we believe in you guys. That's why. That's why. And speaking of people who are able to pull off magical musical miracles at a moment's notice, we would like to thank our musical guest for this week, none other than Tekno AXE, with his following songs of not only reprogrammed reality for the intro, but also for deep thoughts of the jungle that was featured during this week's 3MR. And even the song you're listening to right now, none other than You Can't Dodge a Laser Chill Step remix, that's currently being featured for the outro for this week as we speak for this week's edition of the Indy Radio Arcade. And as always, Tekno AXE, keep up the great work, and we can't wait to hear what you got coming down the tubes next. And finally, finally, last but certainly not least, we would like to thank you, the independent gamers out there, for doing all those sweet video game hits, clips, and high scores that we had a chance to mention during this week's show. And like always, guys, keep them coming, because you never know what show might be around the corner next. Hint, 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 hint. And I guess with the creepy janitor giving us that look to vamoose while wearing some form of leprechaun get up for tomorrow, I'm DJ Smokey on behalf of Carl and the Maestro, saying as always, when there's smoke, there's fire. And we would like to thank you for playing a very special 8-bit mid-month pre-Leprechaun Day edition of Indy Radio. Okay. We're finished, man. We're done. Game over, man. Game over. And good night, everybody.